You're listening to the Practical Wealth Show with Curtis May.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Practical Wealth Show. So I am excited. I have KAYR, the co-founder of KJ Consulting. And I had an opportunity to speak at the dinner of the Investment Blueprint. So he was tearing them up. And so let me tell you about KJ before we bring him on. I'm gonna shorten it because he got a very extensive bio. I might read it all because he's got a lot of good stuff he's done here, but I'm gonna let him tell you what I didn't tell you. But so he's a stellar example of a young professional who has benefited from working on Wall Street, okay, and building a multi-million-dollar real estate investment company with currently over 100 rental units from scratch. Okay, he's native of Philadelphia. And one of the things we were just talking in the green room before we started recording, that during the pandemic, he bought 70 units. All right.
Yes.
While, everybody's upset and marching around, he's quietly making money. Okay. Success leaves clues. All right. And so I want to tell you his little background. He held positions at Goldman Sachs, Ciros Capital Management, Raptor Capital Management, Truist Securities. He's a board member of Philadelphia Young Playwrights. He's also nominated for the 40 Under 40 Leadership Awards program. KAYR has a bachelor's degree in history from Bowdoin and an MBA from the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth. Okay. KAYR, welcome to the Practical Wealth Show.
Well, thank you for having me. And I'm so excited and fired up to be on your platform and just share my stories, share the way I think about things.
Yes. So tell them what I didn't tell them. And then kind of tell them a little bit of your story, because I thought people had to hear about that, of starting from really nothing to, what's your title? Homeless to not homeless.
Yes. My talk was homeless to apartment buildings, to buying apartment buildings.
So give us a snippet of that path, because none of y'all listening to this are homeless. I don't know many homeless people that listen to podcasts. So y'all are already ahead of where he was.
So I grew up in Philadelphia with 6 siblings, a single parent household. My mother raised us on welfare. For you guys who don't know what that is, the EBT card. And we were so broke. I remember one time, my elementary teacher, she brought us KFC. I was like in kindergarten. And she brought my favorite chicken, fried chicken, but she messed up on the side. She had mashed potatoes and macaroni and cheese. I said, where is the coleslaw? You're killing me. But you know what? Beggars can't be picky. I remember that meal distinctively because we were sitting in my living room and we were able to look at the stars because the whole 3rd floor was missing because our house had burnt down. We still was living there. And so from that moment, I always was motivated to achieve financial freedom and also build a legacy for myself and my family. And so I started applying myself. I went to public school in Philadelphia and actually just say, hey, look, let me put my head down. And I went from being a student in middle school to graduating valedictorian from University High School, played sports, also was school president, class president, got a full scholarship, went off to Bowdoin College. Then I worked at Goldman Sachs and I was able to get some M&A experience, financing experience, and industry experience. And I bought my first rental in 2009. And by 2018, I had 9 units. 2019, I had 35. In 2020, I got to 105 rental units. And what I always tell people is that my thing was run your own race.
Right.
And so I think that if you do what's necessary, then do what's possible, you'll find yourself doing the impossible. So I went from making like $10,000 a year in rental income in 2009. Then by 2018, I was making about like $85,000 in rental income a year. And now I make close to $100,000 in rental income just from that one business outside of my other businesses, which is property management, landscaping, a little light rehab, consulting work. And so that's kind of like the quick rundown.
That's exciting. One of the things is, I say the same thing to my daughters, right? You got to run your race. Because they ran the track, right? And a coach used to say, trust your training. And I said, here's how you run the 400, right? You don't worry about the stagger. You got to run your race. And then when you hit 300 meters, the lactic acid is burning, but you got to keep your form and just run your race. Don't worry about what else is doing. And most people, I had a mentor tell me, compete, but don't compare. And so too many people are comparing so-and-so's ahead of me, but you were doing your thing, and slow and steady wins the race because you never stopped working. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, boom, because there was a gap from when did you start?
2009, I had 1 unit. In 2018, I had 9. And a lot of people say, why are you taking your time?
Yes.
Why are you moving so slow? Oh my goodness, everybody's passing you.
Right.
And I was like, that's because that's not my race. I want to keep my 9 to 5 to live off of that. And all my rental income and the money I get from the cash out refis, I want to put that into a bank account. So eventually, like, for example, in year one, you're probably making $4,000 a year in cash flow. But imagine if you bought one property over a 10-year period. Now you have 10 properties making $4,000 a piece after you pay for everything. Now that's $40,000 a year in cash flow that you can start using for down payments on apartment buildings.
Yes.
And so that was my thing. I wanted to understand the business. And I tell people it's a lot easier to focus. If you're a security guard, it's a lot easier to focus on one computer screen, security computer screen, than it is to 100. If you have to focus on 100 things at once, things are likely to slip by you. You're likely to make mistakes. So I said, let me focus on one thing. The riches are in the niches. And that's why I focus before I decide to scale out.
Yes, I love that. I think that what I like about that, so because one of the things that we talk about, listen, in order to do that $40,000 a year, right? If you could get 4%, you need $1 million in like a qualified plan. And now you could, and it would last over 40 years. And that really is not enough once you understand the markets and the dollar going down, all that kind of stuff. But do you think well, in 10 years, you basically did the same thing. And then your knowledge compounded, and therefore, boom, it wasn't just you just did it. You had your knowledge compounded, and then you could go towards the end and grow exponentially. Yes. And so you find that people just are too impatient, and they don't give I call it, you got to give your efforts time to compound. And people are in this.
Yes, I agree 100% with you. I always tell people you cannot rush greatness. And so what people tend to do is they think they can just rush it because they see that on TV or they hear people saying, look, I did X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. And like a lot of people, basically these people are capping. So they're basically lying because it takes a lot of skill, persuading, and a lot of thinking in order to go to a level you've never done before. So I tell people, in order to do something that you've never done, you have to become someone that you have never been. And that's build out your team and your experience and raise the money.
So we always say investing is not about buying something, it's about becoming something. And so it's you became.
Yes.
Right. And becoming is work, and it takes time to do that. And most people want to skip that step. And I don't think you can skip that. That's really profound. You start out with single families and then you moved into multifamilies.
Yes.
And one of the things you said you noticed when you look at the Trumps or the other people that own hotels and bigger stuff, how do they think, and how have you trained yourself to think differently other people? Like, what's the difference in your mind?
So I think what is the difference is that, especially a lot of people from our community, is that they tend to think like workers, or they think that they have to do everything. And what I tell people is, look, I want you to think like an NFL owner, and this throws people off. Think like an NFL general manager and the coach, and that person is going to do the day-to-day, managing the players, finding out the plays. And then the third thing you're supposed to do is watch those two things from afar. So watch the vision that you created unfold and watch the team that you put together unfold. Because your job is supposed to get off the football field and into the owner's suite. So what I started to do working on Wall Street, I start realizing that Goldman Sachs, they had like a book, Goldman Sachs Valuation. I call it like the Bible. It was like a 200, 300 page book. And in that book, what was fascinating is that it answered all your basic questions about valuation multiple ways. It was created by 21 people that were practitioners at the firm. And they gave that to all the new people so that you knew the best practices. So if someone got hit by a bus, your company will still be able to operate. Basically, the show will still go on. They will open the curtain. So what I realized is that I needed to start thinking like a global thinker versus a local thinker. Local thinkers, they tend to say, I want to invest only in my backyard. I only want to do things that my family told me about. But a global thinker is starting to think more globally. How do I position my business, my franchise, relative to others? How am I doing in terms of sponsorships? Because that could be sponsorships, or how am I doing in terms of raising money and raising awareness? How am I doing in terms of operating my business very efficiently and also increasing the top line? And how do I on clockwork? How do I learn how to do And a lot of people don't realize this, but they're really like 4Ds, where you have one, you're doing, two, you're deciding, and three, you're delegating, and four, you're designing. Most of us, from where I grew up, we focus on the doing. We don't spend enough time understanding the designing, the delegating, and the deciding part. So what happens is that you find yourself in a vicious cycle where you're like, I never can really achieve those substantial wealth. I can get the generational wealth, but can I get the substantial wealth? Can I create transformational wealth? And so I think working in these really high pressure type of jobs and serving on like nonprofit boards at such a young age really opened my mind to operating and thinking.
Right. Like old money.
Yeah.
I remember when I first made 100,000 or 50,000, I thought that was all the money in the world. So I hit it. I'm still broke.
Yes,
I remember people talking about, oh, you make 100,000. I was in the company. You're like, oh, and you would get a ring when you walked across stage or 100,000. It's like, and the guy was making like 3 million. He's like, do you need some money? He like reached in his pocket. Do you need 20? Because he didn't want you to think you'd arrive, because that wasn't really any money, especially to run a business. We had an office and you had a secretary that, that's only $8,000 a month. You can't you can't scale, you can't hire anybody.
Yeah.
And apartment buildings is real business. All of it's a business.
Yes.
Right. But it's really, you got to start thinking like a business owner.
If you have a big apartment building, like if you have a one single family, of course you can say, Curtis and I, let's go down there with the ladder and just fix up the roof, or let's go fix up the plumbing. But when you have 24 units, 100 units, 200 units, 300 units, we would damn near die trying to do that, just the two of us.
Right.
So people don't realize that. You'll have people say, look, I open my own LLCs. I don't need a lawyer to do that. I manage all my own properties by myself. I don't need anybody to do that. That's really easy when you have one unit. But when we're talking about millions of dollars worth of real estate, you definitely need to learn how to delegate, learn how to design in terms of like, what is the vision for this business?
Yeah.
How can I take it to the next level? It's a whole different beast. Of course, a sole proprietor, if you own a duplex or fourplex, those things keep you busy. But when you're talking about a business, it's a big business. It's a whole different ballpark.
I think listen to our show. It's people like me. So we were talking about before, I want to grow my business, but I know I need to learn and start doing more of what you're doing, right? There's people that are like Janelle's and people that I work with that are doing that. But most of the people, and this is the sweet spot, they're working, they've got 2 properties, 3 properties, they're looking for deals. How do they begin to scale? And like in your mind, talk to them about how to get out of that and scale and take themselves to the next level.
That's a great question, because I have some people who I know own 100 doors, but they own 100 single families. So therefore they have 100 different mortgages and 100 different roofs and 100 different heaters, versus if you had a 24 unit, all right, let's say 25 unit, you can have 4 apartment buildings with only 4 roofs. And so everything is really scalable, and you can think about it in terms of that. So I think what tends to happen for us is a lot of people just don't have the experience. So what happens is we tend not to find people who we can relate to that can break it down to us simple enough. So I always tell people, look, you got to decide how you're going to learn. Are you going to be self-taught? If you're going to be self-taught, that means you could use YouTube, you could read books, you could just buy stuff, learn the hard way, or you could decide that you want to get a coach. And so you want to get a coach, whoever you decide to have as your coach, make sure that they're willing to show you receipts. And what I mean by receipts, real estate is very public. So therefore you can go and see if they're the owner of these apartment buildings. Do they have relationships with banks? Do things of that nature.
Yeah.
Have they gone from A to Z? Don't get a coach that's at the same level as you, because their ego is going to be in it. And that can prevent them from teaching you how to grow. Right. So I would say for us, for instance, when you're buying the single families, what matters is the quality of the borrower. So the bank is talking about, let me see your credit profile. Let me see your credit score. Let me see your debt to income ratio. And let me see your income, how much you make a year and how long you've been working there. But when you want to play in the big leagues with the apartment buildings, it's about the quality of the deal, because every building is its own business. So you got to learn underwriting. How do I analyze these deals, add value, and also cut expenses? The other thing is, do I have the down payment? How do I raise money if I don't have it myself? So therefore, you need to understand syndication. And that means either you're going to take partners, you're going to do JVs, or you're going to take debt investors. But you got to come up, if you're buying a $1 million property, you got to come up with the $200,000. How are you going to get that? The other thing is you're going to need a guarantor. Either you're going to be worth $1 million if you're going to take out $1 million loan, or you can find someone else to sign on as the guarantor. And so for us, what's really important is that we put ourselves in a situation that we're learning all these basics that we're not familiar with. We're so comfortable with single families because that's what we're taught. And we don't run into a lot of people that look like us that operate in the apartment space.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what's preventing us. And so we're also, a lot of people they're selling you like snake oil. So they're like, oh yeah, you could do this apartment stuff, but the teacher has never done it. And so another thing for us is to understand. So someone would say, hey, look, Curtis, I'll give you a letter on the standard letter, if you want to fix your credit, how you can remove issues on your credit report. That's easy. Someone would say, I'll give you a letter to buy the house down the street, off market deal. Here's the standard letter. But what tends to happen is that a lot of people don't have the standard letter for doing a debt investor letter. How do you do an equity investor letter? How do you market yourself? How do you pitch yourself to a bank?
Yeah.
How do you get in those relationships? How do you convince someone to partner with you that has more experience? With the apartment buildings, they want someone who has operating experience. So you may not have it, but if you can connect with someone who definitely has it, then you're able to do a big deal. And so I think for us, it's figuring out, like I actually started an apartment course, which we have coming up. One is in November 20th. The other one, we're going to have another one in next year. But it's pretty much to teach you syndication. How do you analyze deals? How do you raise money? How do you find these deals? How do you have access to this network? So a lot of us don't have access to the network because a lot of the gatekeepers don't consider people serious if you don't have a certain net worth or you don't have certain credentials. So they won't even return your call.
I'm more a business owner type. And so that excites me because I am unhandy. Like it doesn't even occur to me to paint something. I don't want to walk through. And he's like, yeah, I walk through 15 properties a week. This is why I don't think he does it that much now. But he's like, if I smell cat piss, it smells like money. I was like, none of that shit excites me.
Yes. I tell people, I don't even walk through my apartments unless I'm doing a cameo for a video or something. But other than that, I don't want to be collecting rent. I don't want to run. I don't even want to know if the toilet's is not flushing correctly.
Right.
That's because I'm more like an owner. So I don't want to be tied up in the day-to-day. And that's what prevents us from scaling. So some of us will make generational wealth. And I tell people, so that's like north to south. I buy something in 40 years, my children are 30 years, they have a house. Now they're well off. They're worth $1 million. But if we really want to make, I would say one is transformational wealth, which is like left to right. And what I mean by that is, so for instance, I buy a property for $1 million. I convince my brother to get his real estate license. He gets a 3% commission. Now he got $30,000. He can buy a house for him and his wife and his 5 children to move out of one neighborhood into a better neighborhood of Philadelphia. And they go to better schools like in Abbotston. Not only that, he works on another deal. He gets another commission. He's able to give his in-laws $8,000 for a down payment. So now they're no longer renters. They own a duplex and their wealth was created today. So it's transformational wealth happening today. But on top of that, substantial wealth. And what I mean by substantial is that means that you're worth more than $10 million. That is how we struggle because we haven't really figured out how do you build out a business and leverage it to go to the next level. So we'll have small businesses making $1 million a year. We're happy, 2 million. But how do you really start to build that empire?
There's not enough Black businesses, but that they average like less than $30,000 a year in revenue. It's some crazy number or some statistics I heard like that. So you can't even pay yourself, let alone hire somebody else with that kind of revenue. And then there's sole proprietorships, which means when you die, it's over, it's shut down. So you're not leaving any.
And what I was saying is that it's fascinating because we live in a capitalist society, but we don't understand capital, how it works in the United States of America.
That's right.
So what happened is that we got to really first, I tell people, focus on the 3 C's. One is intellectual capital. How do I educate myself to be in a position to really change my life, whether that's in real estate, insurance, running my own business, that intellectual capital. The other one is going to be the financial capital. How does the financial markets really work? How can I use, whether it's insurance, use my bank relationships, use my current job, use my real estate, my assets? How does financial capital work? Is it that they want me to own debt, or is it that they want me to own equity? Do they want me to own cash? Really figure out what is financial capital? How do I master it? And the last one is social capital. And that is the relationships. You build these relationships, meaningful relationships, so you can affect change in people's lives. So you could serve on a nonprofit board and never give any of your own money. You can convince other people to donate their money because of your social capital that you're.
Brilliant.
And so a lot
Yeah.
of us don't really understand capital.
Is there an order?
There is an order. And the thing is, it's primarily built on, like, everybody, when they come into this world, they're dealt different cards.
Mm-hmm.
Majority of the people, if they're in America and they're working class or middle class, you're going to have to first get the intellectual capital. And the second thing is going to be the financial capital. And the third thing is the social capital.
Mm-hmm.
Because you won't even be able to be invited to the table or certain rooms if you don't have the intellectual capital and the financial capital. So I went to a public school in Philadelphia. I went to University City High School. It was so bad. Had a mini police station. Someone got raped. They shut it down. It was really bad. Back then, I really didn't have that social capital, but I could focus on that intellectual capital, working really hard and getting smart, whether that mean by books or in the streets, but you have to build out that intellectual capital. Then what happened is I got a scholarship, sent me off to Bowdoin College, and I was able to go to Philip Exeter for a summer school program. And it was the first time my roommate, his brother was one of the founders of Priceline, and he called his maid because he was homesick. It was the first time I got on a yacht, first time I played tennis. It just changed the whole way I look at the world. And then what was fascinating was that I went to Bowdoin, worked my butt off. I started to build some financial capital, getting a job and understand how money worked. And now I'm able to leverage the social capital because someone says, hey, KR, can you serve on our nonprofit board? Hey, KR, can we do an interview on you by like Market Watch? Or
Mm-hmm.
hey, KR, can we do like a spread on you? Because now people are starting to say, we want to be connected with him, or we want to help him become successful because he's already mastered the intellectual capital and a financial capital. So he checks certain boxes. He or she makes us really comfortable putting him in certain rooms and situations.
Yeah. And even with the intellectual capital, it's one of the things that we talk about is I teach our clients, you got to invest your mindset, your skill set, and your network. And what makes money is your ability to solve problems, and your specialized knowledge is what generates revenue. And so because your income is in direct proportion to the value that you bring to the marketplace, right? KR has become somebody that can create value in the marketplace, and the result of value is money. Like, people want more money, but money is the result. It's not, and that's a thing people don't have in their mind, is like, I need more money. Well, that's not how it works. And you know what I mean? And so even when you're talking about during the summer where people were marching around, you were buying property, but you were solving problems, right? Because the tax code is a stimulus program, right? I was in a meeting with Tom Wheelwright, Kiyosaki's accountant. He says, listen, has things they need done. They can't take all your money, right? So they will put carrots out there. So what do they want? They want jobs, they want housing, they want food, and they want energy, right? And so if you do all those things, I won't say you won't pay taxes, but you will seriously minimize your taxation if you partner and do what the government. And we just don't understand the games. Like, we don't understand capitalism. We don't understand.
Another thing I always tell people, like, for instance, if we are in real estate, I think it's good. Like, some people would say, I'm just going to get in real estate and I'm going to do Section 8. That is good because it's really steady. But think about Section 8, for instance, in America. Section 8 is a nice niche, but it's not majority of the market, where majority of the landlords and big owners operate. That's like a little niche. It's kind of like a type of government type of program. So of course the government is going to pay, but if I'm a Section 8 person, I can pride myself and say, but you know what? That's good for the government. You're not getting a market rent. You're not really competing at the highest level. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just going to call a spade. If you think about the rest of America, the big dogs, and it could be the former president, it could be a number of people that own big apartment buildings. They're not primarily Section 8. They're competing at the highest level, and they're confident in their ability to deliver a product that is so good that you're willing to pay top dollar for. So sometimes we like to play it safe. When we say, I'm just going to do all Section 8, I'm just going to stick it out right here. It's really good. It's safe. But I really encourage people, push yourself. Go ahead, and I think you can compete at every level of this real estate game. And so a lot of us need to really rethink about always playing it safe. Let's take on some risks. Let's compete where everybody else is competing. And so I really encourage people to think about, but I also encourage them to think about how capital really works in this country. So a lot of people would say, hey, and I tell people, look, do not come to me if you want to be a real estate thot. So that is what I call is that hoe over there. So I said, don't be a real estate thot. And what I mean by that is I'll have someone run up on me and they'll say, Curtis, look, I'm doing Airbnb tonight. Tomorrow I'm going to be buying land. And next week I'm doing short-term rentals. And next week I'm doing flips. I'm like, you just a real estate thot. You just sleeping with everything in real estate. You're not focused. You might as well just be a prostitute. Or what I tell them, a real estate thot. And what I tell them, look, you might as well be, when I grew up in Philadelphia, a barbershop, we used to have crack kids come in and say, oh, yo, I'm selling hot dogs tomorrow. Yo, what y'all need? I got TVs today. On Friday, I'll be back with some PlayStation, some Xbox. And I used to tell people, look, I ain't trying to be no crack kid. And America really doesn't like crack kids either. The riches are in the niches. So that's why you find people like Bill Gates came up with his niche. Or you have the founder of Facebook with that niche. Or you have someone who came up with Tesla. They all come up with their niches, or Amazon, they come up with their niches. Then once they build that foundation, then they're able to expand and try different things. So that's the first thing I learned about capital and investments. The first thing is return of investment, OF. The second thing is return on investment, ON. So I think for us, we have to really transform the way we think about business and how we interact with capital if we want to have substantial wealth. Like I already know I'm going to be worth $100 million because I've taken the steps to stack the odds in my favor.
You're not looking for excitement. You got a formula. You just keep working your plan.
Absolutely. And that's how the big money do it.
Yeah.
I tell people like Titanic, it's either going to be the new money or you're going to be the old money.
Let's talk about that for a second, right? Because one of the things I tell people is two schools of thought in finance, right? So in personal finance, they teach buy and hold, dollar cost average, get out of debt, like buy term investor difference. But if you took corporate finance, they don't teach that. They teach velocity, return of your money. How fast can you, like if you look at Mr. Wonderful, I told people, look, he wants to know, all right, I'm going to put $1 million in your deal. How soon do I get my money back? That's return of his money, right? And that deal is still throwing off equity and cash flow. Then there's return. But if you get your money back out, your risk is zero because you got your capital back out, right? And now you've got it ready to deploy in something else. And that little carburetor adjustment is so hard for people to understand of that thing, because we've been brainwashed for 30, 40 years by modern portfolio theory and all that kind of stuff.
I think it's very important but there's a time when you switch gears from being return of investment and then it's return on investment. And so for instance, when I bought single families, you would get really excited and I will buy something for, let's say $22,000, put $17,000 in, it appraises $17,000 to fix it up. It appraises for $115,000 and I get like a $86,000 check. And I used to be jumping for joy, like, yo, I'm the man, I killed it. And now I just bought like an apartment building for $1.78 million last year. And the guy I bought it from, he bought it 2 years prior at, let's say, $900,000. So he made $900,000 in 2 years. And then he's doing a 1031 exchange to buy something bigger. And I start saying, man, I used to be happy making 80-something thousand. This man, he making like almost $1 million in 2 years. I need to go play in that league. Because what's fascinating is I tell people when you buy these apartment buildings, they want you to own them for at least ideally 3 to 5 years, primarily because it takes time to turn over you got to fix them up. You could be short-term oriented and say, look, I'm going to refi after 2 years. But primarily, a lot of these big guys, they will own it for 5 years before they refi because they understand that now it's return on investment, not necessarily your focus of return of investment. So when I bought this property for $1.78 million, we're projecting it'll be worth in 4 to 5 years, probably like $4 to $5 million. And that's because we're going to take all the steps to really improve the business, increase the rents, cut the expenses. Now I could refi after 2 years and probably get 2.5, but that's short-term thinking. Now I'm focused on return on investment versus trying to return of investment. When in the beginning, when you you have a little bit of money, you're trying to get it back so fast.
Right.
But now you're trying to get the biggest bag that you can get because you have that solid foundation that now you can make that big money.
Listen, y'all need to play this. When we get done, you need to go back and get your notepad out. So if you're in the treadmill, he just broke down and the whole talk, but 20 minutes, he just gave y'all some serious science there, just in the mentality of what it takes to play and how you have to push yourself to get to a higher level of thinking, that we are thinking too small, and the only thing that's holding us back is how we think.
Oh, absolutely. It's amazing that once you and I, for instance, you're a very experienced businessman. And so you already have a proven model that you can do certain things and operate at a high level. Now it's like, do you want to operate, say, for instance, you're in the top 10%, top 15%. Do you want to go to the top 1%? How do you make that leap? And that's when you start thinking like more of the owner of an empire versus more of the owner of just one business.
Yeah, but so while you're thinking that, I'm going, how do I do this next year? How do I start on this? Because I don't want, like, this is my dad used to say, because I was like, I thought we dropped the ball. So I was telling somebody, so I think like business is like my favorite asset class, right? But I know I'm missing something. But my dad, we were in the retail. So we were in the supermarket growing up, and we're in the bar business.
Okay.
So I was like, Dad, we should buy some real estate, don't you think? He says, what am I going to do with $800 a month? Right. And because he would get mixed use properties. And at the time he could make the retail space, the bar, make $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a week. So that in his mind, but it was still the retail was tough, but or the bar business became unfavored as certain administrations got in there. And so we should have diversified a little bit, but that's not always stuck with me. And so it's kind of like you got to row in a boat. You got to row a boat. It's like buy real estate and get the passive income. And you got to do both. And I'm trying not to make sure I fall in that trap, but I'm still my dad's son. But you're like me. I'm talking to you going, all right, I need to.
No, a lot of us, what's fascinating, a lot of us have the experience and have the desire, but we never really sit back. And that's why I said the 4Ds, and I talked about the designing part. Yes. Once you start figuring out, I got to get someone else to do a lot of the doing in my business, and I got to get someone else to do some of the deciding in my business and the delegate. Therefore, you can spend more time thinking about the designing part.
Yes, there's no money in implementation. Implementators or the doers are the lowest paid. Yeah, like if you look at a hotel, the housekeeping is doers, right? And they make the least, even though they would be nothing without them cleaning the rooms up, but they still make the least amount of money out of everybody.
Think about, you'll hear a lot of people say, look, Curtis, if you get into real estate, you should be your own GM, be your own GC, your own general contractor. Yes. And so you're telling me I've been running my own business, financial advisory, or what have you. Now I'm 45. You're telling me that you want me to go run downtown to go get permits and stuff and check on my sites every single day. I said, hell no. There's a reason why they have GCs. There's a reason why they have dentists and doctors. I want to have a dentist. I can call and pay. I can GC. I can call and pay. That's the reason why you have butlers and you have help. And you have lawyers to do the LLCs, because I want to make sure everybody's eating on my team so that I can spend more time designing. So Jeff Bezos said when he first started, he was making 1,000 decisions, working around the clock. But now he says every day, and I don't know if he stole this from me or I took it from him, but every day he spends 2 days, basically the whole day, thinking about 2 ways of making his business go to the next level, his businesses. Just spending the whole day thinking, critically thinking, very hard, creatively. If you force yourself to get into designing, you're going to find so many amazing ways to come up and create money and wealth.
Yes, I
so
agree
for
with that.
A lot of us, we don't do that. And the reason why is because we don't understand capital. And it's a reason why VC firms, a new startup, you have 100% of the ownership, the 2 founders. But as they work with a VC firm and they raise money, the ownership goes down, but you can keep the control of the business, even though you only own 10% of it. Because in order to grow, you have to be willing to work with other people and give away some of the equity. So like I'm starting a new LLC, and my brother, he's going to get 5% equity, not because he's putting money in, but because I believe in transformation. And so a lot of us, that's what keeps us back, as we want to do everything on our own. We want to be the GC. We want to be the permit expediter. We want to be our own insurance guy. We want to be our own cook. I learned a long time ago, hanging out on yachts where they have personal chefs and stuff. I said, these cats, they got somebody doing everything. They got a whole team. They got a whole staff. I said, I better start figuring this out. Give some people some equity to incentivize them.
That's very profound. Sometimes I get that way, and I've been learning to, all right, you what's that saying? You rather have 1% effort off 100 people than
Yeah.
100% self effort, right?
Or what
And
I tell people is I'd rather have 10% of $1 billion business, than have 100% of a $10 million business.
dude, I could talk to you all day. So or at least quarterly about this kind of stuff. I think that some of this stuff and we didn't get that technical, but tactical today, but I think this was foundational just so that just the idea that you got to get out of, one of the things I tell people that I think tells the point is like I studied this guy, Dan Sullivan, strategic coach. And one of the things he says is until you double your time off, you cannot double your income, right? Because you have to create separation so you can think about your business. I have a guy that I interviewed, Neil Bawa. He's a company called Grow Capitalist. And he says, listen, he takes Fridays off just to think. He don't work on Fridays. He just thinks about his business. Now he said he didn't start that way. It was like 20 minutes, and then it was an hour, and then it was 2 hours. And as he built his business, but you have to design, and that, because it's the imagination is where the money's made. Nobody knows Steve Wozniak that did the software, but everybody knows Jobs because he was the design, he sold the visionary.
The designer. If you think about the designing, the vision, what I was saying is the vision for the franchise, the business.
Yes.
How do you imagine that? How do I tell you a story that's so compelling that is gripping?
Yes. And that's key. And so wherever you are, I don't like branding, but you have a brand. Like I was listening to Michael Gerber talking to this like local real estate guy. So look, Trump has a brand. If you go into one of his buildings, you know what it is, but you could be that way with your single families, with your apartment buildings, whatever it is that you're trying to have them think about you when they walk into your spot. So there's a waiting list to get into. If they know you put up a building, they all want to get in. That you can create that.
Oh yeah. If you go to my page, you'll see a few of my buildings have my name, KAYR Apartment. And there's the reason is because when you are taking over a property, how do people know it's new management? I didn't put a sign up saying new management. I put my name up to let them know, whoa, it's a new owner. It used to be Boat House. Now it's KAYR Apartments. It's a new sheriff in town. And so you learn that by studying. I used to analyze companies. So I understand that they want their stores to look the same, whether it's McDonald's or Apple. So you start doing it the same thing. So if you see any of my listings for my properties, it'll say KAYR Management presents a new single family or a new apartment building, because you're starting to think about branding. KJ Consulting, my LLCs start with KAY. That's because of me. So it's all these things you have to think about. How do I leverage it to affect change and tell a story, whether that's to new investors or to students or to anyone?
Yeah.
It's that brand equity.
Yeah. How should they follow you? How can they follow and see what you got going on and just kind of get into your world a little bit?
So the number one thing I would say is follow me on IG, Instagram at KAYJAYCONSULTING, KJ Consulting on IG. The other way to follow me is at my website, where we have like a newsletter we put out every other month or what have you. And that is at kjconsulting.net. So that's www.JAYCONSULTING.net. And what's pretty cool is that Market Watch just did an interview on me, and that's on YouTube. So you guys should check it out. Look up KAYR, KAYR on YouTube if you want to watch the video they did on me in an article. So those are 3 ways you definitely should reach out to me if you're interested in the way I think or want to just learn how to do real estate the right way.
And you have a course coming up, or is it over?
Yes, we do have a course coming up. So I have a 4-hour course where I teach you how to analyze individual markets and then teach you how to analyze individual deals. This is our boot camp for units 1 to 4 units. It's a 4-hour course. And the next one is in January, I believe January 29th, 2022. And what we do in that course is we're going to talk about war stories. We're also going to explain all the key terms and concepts. And you're going to walk away with with all the definitions, best practices, the questions to ask a property manager, a realtor, a hard money lender. But what's most important is that I don't believe in one night stands. So I'm not just going to make you feel good and disappear. What we do is we work with you for the next 12 months, once a month doing check-ins. at no additional cost. And so that course is $349. You can sign up on my website. My other course is the apartment course, where we teach you how to buy 5 units and up. And we teach you about syndication, about raising money, analyzing deals. You get access to my network. We use real case studies, deals that I worked on, and we work with you for the next 12 at no additional cost, and that's $9.99. And we do consultations for 45 minutes. And so I tell people, look, I'm not a jack of all trades, but I am a master of 3. So we try to focus on our apartment analysis, our single family analysis. We do value add, and we do some consultations. And that's pretty much it for me in terms of like my offering online.
Right. So guys, I'm gonna let y'all into private consulting for Curtis. So with somebody like me running another business, because I know there's a bunch of people out there, and let's say we took because the $9.99 for what he's offering is nothing, okay? And you can put that on a credit card, okay? That's good debt. Y'all use $1,000, all kinds of other dumb stuff. You need to figure out how to buy something to make some money. But so I'm talking about Curtis here. I know I have shiny object syndrome, right? And so sometimes I will purposely say no to stuff because I just want to stay focused on what I'm doing. But you think somebody could walk and chew gum at the same time, grow their business, and then learn how to, I guess it would be sort of like a second business, syndication, and study with another coach on how to do that.
Absolutely. And I do sometimes do private coaching because I have some executives that are extremely busy and they want more of a customized type of learning environment. But that's my case. But majority of the people, you definitely can take my course to understand underwriting and then take your time, your self-paced learning for the next 12 months, because that's really going to be your financial freedom. If you already run a business that makes 6 figures, you're trying to figure out, how do I start creating another business that's more passive, if that's your thing. Yes. I'm not going to tell you become the GC. I'm not going to tell you to go be the contractor. I'm trying to figure out, okay, you're at a certain place, you and your wife, or you and your husband, whoever it is, how do we come up with a plan for you to get to what's your goal for the next 2 years, 5 years, 6 years? And so sometimes I'm working with like 2 doctors. They're extremely busy. They didn't want to take the regular course. We worked out something. Or I have people sign up for the $9.99 course, and we come up with a concrete plan that they can execute over the next 12 months. So it comes down to preference. But I definitely think someone who's like you, who's very skilled and thoughtful, you can start to take the baby steps. Just imagine what I said with the single families. Imagine you were buying a 1.5 unit on a regular basis for the next 10 years. Now you have 50 units. And you did something very sleepy, right? It's not like you're saying, I'm going to buy 50 in 1 year. You say, I'm going to buy 1.5 unit and spend all my time focused on understanding that from A to Z. And then I'm going to do the same thing next year. I'm going to spend 12 months doing one thing and do it extraordinarily well. And then I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to do it again. Versus thinking you got to do 100,000. I
like this. That's how my mind works. I'm looking at our business going, all right, I'm going to go through this thing. Like, it's different areas of my business. I'm going to go through this one thing 4 times over the quarter. And every quarter, I'm going to add 1 or 2 new things to my business. And you know what I mean? Over the next year, and I try to get better every 90 days. And I'll just add this new thing and just build my vision of my perfect business. But I see the other thing also, and I can't lunch on that. I kind of need to walk and chew gum at the same time. And that's kind of, and hopefully y'all got that vision also.
And most people definitely can do it. So you're able to eat and have a conversation at the dinner table. So most people definitely can do it. What happens is that a lot of us, we talk ourselves out of stuff versus talking ourselves into stuff.
Yeah.
And so I tell people, I'd rather take a chance. I'd rather shoot for the fence. I'd rather shoot for the stars and hit the moon than shoot for the fence and hit the ground.
Right.
But the thing is that we're not even taking that chance. I had an interview last week. Someone was talking about, I'm buying land, a young person. He's like 24. I'm like, so how much money are you making off the land? He said, well, I haven't made anything. But I said, that's like you going to the mall, baseball bats, and then 5 years pass and you've never swung one bat because you spent so much time just thinking you could only do one thing at a time, which was buy land. Like, you could spend so much time just focusing on your own business, and you'll wake up and say, man, I missed a decade of an opportunity to buy various apartment buildings. I could at least bought 3 by now, and they'd be free and clear, and I'd be getting like $5,000 a month just for that one building.
That's what I'm feeling. Okay. And I know some other people out there that feel like that. And I could buy a property a year but now buy one to have 5, right? Instead of one that's making me $300 a month. Then that would maybe revert back to my father, right? No, that's good stuff.
You got to cash your bucket where you are, right? So you
Yeah.
probably talk to a lot of real estate people, and I'm sure they're good people. But what I try to do is make it so simple that you understand that you can do it.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science.
Right.
So some people, they're going to play in a single family lane. I tell them, go ahead, just do that. Get one a year for the next 10 years. You want to play in a 5-unit, get one for the next 10 years. Then you have 50, the other person has 10. Nothing wrong. We just got to decide what's going to be our niche and just become the very best at it.
Yes. Yes, that makes so much sense. I'm going to have all of his stuff in the show notes, and this is definitely a writer downer. So if you heard this for the first time, you need to go back and you need to get your journal out, because I want to listen to this again. I'm like, so some of the stuff I'm going to steal. You're going to wait a minute. I talked to Curtis. I heard that before. He's got that from me. Yes, I did. If I see an audience, I'm going to give you credit.
I'm glad that this message resonated with you, because the reason why I decided to come out and start social media in August of 2020 is because I said, my business partners were like, hey, how about you come out with a way to start educating a lot of people? Because so many people, they have so much hype and hear that it's so complicated. Like, I'm never going to go wrong with those people that do this. I'm never going to tell you just go out and get $150,000 hard money loan on your first investment, because I want to stack the odds in your favor. And I don't want you to pay that much money just to get started in the business. So I tell people, look, just start slow and build your way up. If you could never manage $5,000, why would I want you to go get $150,000 where you're going to pay up to like 18% in fees? So I always tell people, I'm not trying to bring you where I am. I'm going to turn around and meet you where you are, and let's figure out your life from there.
Yeah. Yes, that is awesome. Hey guys, thanks for listening to the Practical Wealth Show. And I'm going to have all KR stuff in the show. Make sure you follow him. This has been a great episode just on the mindset it takes to win. And go out there and make success happen. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Practical Wealth. To access the show notes and resources, go to practicalwealthshow.com. To get your questions on the show, go to practicalwealthshow.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any investment decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Practical Wealth. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.